If you can't hear it, our Gus can't hear it. Hold on, let's pause.
Let's start it over. No music. No music. No music. It's okay. Sati will edit this part. Thank you, Sati. Hey. Boom. Oh, that's a conference part. Boom, bow, bow, bow. Oh,
For our listeners listening live, this is
right.
what happens when you get busy talking to exciting guests behind the scenes.
Hey, we genuinely love talking to our guests. So yes, got a little carried away, but we're here now. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing so well.
Good.
I am, I was telling somebody the other day, well, it's a miracle, just being home for a
Mm,
month in a row
mhm.
and catching up with myself.
Yes.
And really, I don't know. We've just been having so much fun with the work we've been doing
Yeah,
and looking at this year and what's happening. And I don't know. I love meaningful work.
me
And I
too.
just am feeling really, I don't fulfill. It's just such a kind of an old fashioned word, but I'm just feeling happy and fulfilled and full and
We should bring it
yeah,
back, fulfilled. Yeah, bring it
right?
back. And I love
Right?
it. Today we're talking about social wellness. And when I think about sometimes the disconnect that you can feel between what you feel like you're supposed to be doing and what you are doing and where you see your purpose being, I love that. I feel the same way. Like no matter how tired I am, the emergencies that we mitigate, no matter anything, it's going to be worth it. I love it. I love talking to each guest. I love sharing the resources. I love knowing the positive impact that we're having, and that's where I live with it. So I definitely hear what you're saying.
Well, I was just thinking as you asked me, like I always question myself, right? It's like I always say something, I'm like, oh, is that what you really meant? Is
I
that
understand.
and what I realized is time doesn't heal everything. We know
Right.
that to be true, right?
Mhm,
Sometimes it
mhm,
takes therapy, which our next
mhm.
guest will have some input on that. But
Yes.
it takes tools and resources but I
Mm,
do think with grief and loss especially, time
mm,
does ease things, right? And I think that may be part of what I'm feeling is an
mm.
easing of some of the intensity of last year, right?
That makes sense.
Which I'm grateful for. Because
Right.
who knows what this year's going to bring.
You know?
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like getting to catch our breath and have some fun. And yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I love that for you.
Should we
Okay.
do our official intro?
That's what I was about to say. Let's do it.
Oh,
Hi,
there we
ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon best-selling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, Amazon best-selling published author and publisher, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself in community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co founders of Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week with special expert guests for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this? Right?
Yes, so
I was
important.
just thinking about how do we do it in our whole authentic, perfectly imperfect selves?
Mhm, mhm. Especially with like social wellness. What's been coming up for me is our conversation with Maya. And we talked about higher education, right? And seeing what's going on with Black women, seeing just the environment, seeing what's going on in general in the workplace. And for me, when I think about women connected in wisdom, or even people connected in wisdom, because it's not always women for me at work, sometimes it is men. And I have
Mhm,
my key people who are like my social anchors. No, you're not crazy. This is what you do next, or you did the right
mhm.
thing, or good job. I would do this next time, and it's really important for me to have those in every environment that I'm in, um, to make sure that I'm seeing things straight and I can come as my best self.
Right? I think about when I think about social wellness, I think that
Mhm.
may be why I'm feeling so fulfilled lately too, is because I've been home long enough to see my people, right?
Yeah.
And to like, yes, it was a work day last Friday, but we got to hang out and,
Yeah, we did.
eat a meal together.
Yeah.
And I think about we've had game nights at my house recently because,
Mhm.
the kids have been home on winter break. And
Mhm.
I just the things that bring us joy and community and connect us. I
Mhm.
really, yeah, I'm grateful.
I love it. Connected in community. I know we talk about it all the time, but just like we sometimes, or really every show now, talk about the part of the definition that stands out to us for social wellness, connected in community has been huge on being intentional on who's in the community. Why? As I venture longer into these businesses, I'm really intentional about being surrounded by entrepreneurs and people who
Mhm.
have done stuff that we look forward to doing and that can coach and help through different situations.
Mm, I like that. Should I read the definition for our
Yeah,
listeners about
let's
what we're
do it.
talking about today? So, y'all, social wellness, as we define it at Women Connected in Wisdom, is about the ability to nurture ourselves, others, and our relationships with healthy boundaries. It includes balancing, which we
Mhm.
always put in quotes,
Right.
the other seven dimensions of wellness, and actively participating as an interdependent being in the web of life.
Mhm. So many things. I mean, we were just talking to one of our guests that's going to come in March about the interdependentness.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
social wellness is who whether it's job applications or resources that we share here, whether it's just as a sounding board. That social wellness is so important. What sticks out to you in this definition this week?
Well, it actually, when I read it, it took me to a story.
Mm,
So I think I told you this, but I can't remember.
okay.
So, as some of my listeners know, I moved my parents last year from Texas to Colorado for my dad's rehab.
Mhm.
And my dad is a farmer from Texas. That is, he was a teacher his whole career, and he's been an organic farmer. And when he retired, he has a small organic farm. And this year there is a bumper crop of pecans. And he called me up fretting about it and wanting me to fly to Texas to pick up pecans to bring him in Colorado, which, that wasn't going to happen right away, right? But I
Right.
think about social wellness, and his neighbors went over and picked up pecans and shipped him pecans. So he could be cracking pecans and having something to do in the rehab center. And then one of his neighbor's daughters now goes to college not far from where my parents live. And when
Wow.
she was home from the holidays and drove back, she brought him more pecans.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
just think, right? I think about the sweetness of it, but I think it's social wellness, which
Yes.
is leading to his emotional and mental wellness. Like, I
Mhm.
just think about that interconnectedness and
Mm.
that balancing of them, right? Because he's away from his people in Texas, but they are still holding that connection and fostering that connection, which is so beautiful.
Yes, and I love that it didn't have to be you. That there were other options, that there were, options that fell into place and weren't as taxing as it would have been for you, for them, and it could be win 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 all over the place.
Right. I just when he called me, I had this vision of me getting on a plane with a suitcase full of pecans
Pecans?
and TSA opening it up.
Ma'am, what are you doing? What's going on? So I have a question. What is a bumper crop? Is that on the outside, like a bumper on the
No, a bumper
bowling?
crop is like a big crop. It's
Oh,
it's lingo for like it is like it's a big year, it's a good
okay,
year. So
okay.
like in most crops, they rotate. Like
Mhm.
sometimes it'll be an okay year, sometimes it'll be a really bad year, sometimes it'll be a really excellent year. And
Okay.
with pecans, if I remember correctly, because I've been off the farm for a couple of years, but I
Right.
think it's about every 3 years that there's a bumper crop. And it means that there's just pecans everywhere. Like, I
Mm.
mean, there, and it makes a difference on how hard the freeze was, how much water there is, all the things about nature. But
Yes.
we call it a bumper crop when it's just like an extraordinary amount and
Got
you're
it.
hustling to get it all in. So,
Okay. That
yeah.
makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Well, we were having such a good conversation before the show. I'm excited to get into this conversation with our guests. Are you okay if I read the bio
Absolutely.
and bring
Let's
her
do
on
it.
stage? Okay, ladies. So today we are talking to Shenell Sarwon. And Shenell Sarwon is a licensed mental health professional turned coach who is committed to supporting amazing women in achieving holistic success and wellness in their relationships, mind, body, business, and faith. Please help us welcome to the stage Shenell.
Woohoo!
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to join you guys.
We're
Absolutely.
delighted for you to be here. And you're coming to us from Houston, Texas today, right?
I am. Yes, ma'am.
I love it. I love it. That is where I was before I moved to Atlanta.
Mm.
And so have a lot of dear friends and people there. Glad you could join us.
Yes.
Yes, I remember you sharing that. I am glad I could
Yes.
join you guys as well. I'm really excited.
Good. Yes. So today, Chanel, we're talking about heal, dream, and launch,
Hmm.
right? So, as somebody in the mental health industry, can you tell us about your transition from helping people heal to helping them heal, dream, and then launch into their projects and businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I still work in the capacity of a therapist. I now work specifically with couples, and I
Beautiful.
have shifted to coaching of individuals, especially targeted at women. Just because I recognize that there's a level of flexibility that I wanted to be able to approach my work with in support of women,
Yes.
and coaching really afforded that to me. And so, what I find is that I think even before coming on, uh, we were having a discussion
Yes.
backstage and talking
Yes.
about the idea that most people reach out for therapy because they're thinking about, I need to heal from something.
Right.
There's something that's been going on in my life, and I'm noticing now there's a problem. And so I'm wanting to kind of target that and work through that. And then once they get to that place where they feel like, hey, now I'm good, they kind of venture out and maybe sometimes look for support in another avenue to take them the next step further. And
Okay.
I've found that in my work, I'm really centered around the idea of supporting people in their healing journey to get to a place to actually be able to recognize that dream inside of them. And so, in order for us to really access that dream, we do have to pass through healing. And then it's the support of helping them launch into that. Now that I'm able to think about dreaming again or having a vision for my life, how do I take the steps to actualize that vision?
Right. So, can we talk more about launching? When I hear you say launch, I'm thinking about add key performance indicators, right? What are the conversions? What are the steps that I need in my launch? When you say launch, what are you thinking about specifically?
So I definitely think about the practical pieces of that as well. And I'm thinking about that in specifics to each individual, because the steps that may be needed for one person to launch are completely different for another person to launch, depending upon what that dream is.
Mhm.
Because remember, even as we dream, I mean, that dream looks so personal for each of us. And for some people, they're in a space where maybe dreaming is shifting into the space now that I want to have a family. I want to spend more time focusing in this arena of my life, the personal. For some people, it is a specific business endeavor. For some people, it's shifting, professional gears. Maybe they have a different path that they want to go down. So there's not necessarily like a ABC step, approach. It's
Right.
more of working with every individual, specifically where they are, as we get more insight into where you're going, now
Mhm.
we are able to apply the specific steps for getting you to where you're trying to get to.
Right. I love that you say that. I'm reading this book on sales, and it talks about how selling is not a, like you said, a one, two, three, just in order. It's a process. And sometimes you go back and forth and you have to keep the dialogue going, and with your Heal Dream launch, for me, when I think about dream, I also think about you, Christine, right? And how we dream about what we want for Women Connected in Wisdom and where we see things going and how we've realized those things. And also how we help people balance the celebratory wins and make sure that you make space to celebrate what you just did, right? And also acknowledging the grief and the things that we're going through so we can really heal and unpack and continue to dream for ourselves and launch it to the things that we have next.
Mhm.
Right? I think it's the whole package,
Yeah.
right? I think, Chanel, when you talk about like being a relationship coach or therapist, I mean, I'm personally of the belief that everything comes down to relationships,
Mhm.
whether it's the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with our partners, whether they're our romantic partners or our business partners, or, you know, that if our relationships are healthy and we're healthy with ourselves, then we can do what we set out to do, right? But if there's a problem or an issue, getting support and help with that, I think it's necessary. And I think you and
Mhm.
I talked when we were doing our coffee and chat. I was also trained as a clinical social worker and therapist
Mhm.
and moved into the coaching field. And I think it's so necessary and so needed for folks. And getting over the stigma and the what used to be old school, and I think some people still have it in some regards of, oh, I should be able to do this by myself.
Mhm.
I don't need help, or I don't, they don't want to be seen as, I'm even losing the word, you know, well, there's
Maybe
stigma around it,
incompetent or
right?
incapable of doing what
Right.
you need to do. Yeah.
And you would think in 2024 that there's not stigma around it, but I think in some ways there still are. Like people are
Mhm.
like, "Oh, and I'm the believer, of course, I'm in this field, and I don't know about you, but when I went through my training years ago, like one of the first things my mentors and coaches said, and my mentors and professors said was, get a therapist, like work
Mhm.
on your
Mhm.
own stuff before you hold space for somebody else. So, I've been doing that for years and love
Mhm.
it, and am the person I am today because of it. And
Mhm.
I often say, somebody asked me the other day, I can't remember who asked me. My husband and I, Joe and I, have been married 30 years, and we're celebrating 30 years this year. And somebody said, how are y'all still together? Or how do you, I
Mhm.
can't remember how they asked the question. And it was really funny. It was somebody that was much younger than me. And I was just like, oh, therapy, by all means.
It's
Because
important.
relationships are tough, even with really
Mhm.
good people, because of the stressors of the world, I think. And especially if we haven't unpacked what we were taught as kids, or, sometimes we may not have had good models for some of this stuff.
Mhm.
So I think I went off on a tangent there, but that was everything I was thinking about when you were talking about your intro.
Hey, and what I'm gonna say as a podcaster, you're allowed to talk a lot, okay? So
Right?
it's okay. Yes.
I was tracking with it.
Great.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
good.
we're with you.
Yes.
Did you have anything to say to any of the stuff she said, Chanel?
Yeah, honestly, I think both of you guys touched on something that made me consider one of the big focuses in the work I do is the idea of being versus doing. So not focusing so much on the doing. And unfortunately, sometimes I find that in the field that we work in or are familiar with, that it's this idea of, hey, these are the steps that you take and you apply these things, and this is what solves your issue or, whatever obstacles that you're up against. And, what I find, especially working a lot with trauma, I mean, those steps are only going to get you so far. It's more a matter of the internal stuff that's at work. And so, this idea that, as we shift in our being, that we are kind of transforming internally, we naturally go out and we show up differently. We don't really have to, work as hard that now I need to think about doing one, two, and three. I'm naturally doing certain things because of the state in which I'm approaching my world from. And so, this idea of, even relationships, sometimes when relationships starts, we are investing into them and we're doing the work. The state of that relationship looks different too. So the quality that you get from that relationship is different because of what it is in essence, versus sometimes just doing the one, two, three things, without real meaningful connection. And I think when we talk about this idea of, social wellness, that really the focus is real meaningful connection, that we're connecting and not losing that piece. So that's what I hear. That's what I imagine is required to make it 30, plus years in a marriage or doing life with any person, is you have to, get to a place where you genuinely value, appreciate, and respect this other human being.
Right.
I think the other thing is how to have tough conversations. I
Hmm.
think it's not just necessary. I mean, we've had Shannon and I've had some as business partners, and also
Yes.
we've had some with guests on the show.
Mhm.
And I think in order to affect change, right? And especially to affect positive change, I think it's important that we learn the skills of having those deep, sometimes tough
Hmm.
conversations. And I don't know where I'm going with that. It just really came up for me when you were talking.
Hmm.
I was like, to be authentic, to be real, to be, well, that's how we started the darn podcast. Like, we were having some of these conversations in our manifesting meeting,
Yeah, we
and
were.
Shannon's like, I don't think most people have these conversations.
Hmm.
And she was definitely, I don't think people our age, because we're of different generations
Hmm.
and our difference, she's like, I don't think people have these conversations. We need to have more of these conversations. And so
Yeah.
it's one of the seeds that started Women Connected in Wisdom.
Yes,
Hmm.
because especially as women, like, and we talk about this a lot, the different details on the podcast, right? We talk about authors. We used to have to write in pen names because women weren't allowed to publish books, right? We're talking about taxes and 1099s for royalties and what we need and figuring out new things based on policy updates. And a few years ago, women weren't allowed to have accounts. We weren't allowed to own assets, So just a change in the environment has dictated that we learn new things. And when we talk about where we live and the separation of education, and then you add in gatekeepers and people who don't want to share all the information that they know. So you have one, two, and three, and then seven, eight, and nine, and trying to figure out why you didn't get to the end of your goal and your dream and your launch. And so
Hmm.
when we were having really effective conversations, we had an amazing group of women at the table, and the tables at Starbucks were only but so big, and we said we need more people. To I said, there should be more people in these conversations. I know more women and families would benefit from some of these resources, and that's how we started doing this. But to go to the point of people feeling like they're not getting there, I was having this conversation earlier. When I think about it, I think about faith. I believe as a person, you're never gonna be all the way there. You're never gonna have everything where you can do it on your own. You're gonna need God. That's how we're made, right? There's gonna need that extra bit to push you to the extra credit to where he exceeds expectations, and things fall together, and that's with him, with us doing our best. And something we were talking about also is a community, so I would love for you to talk about community, Chanel, and how you help people heal as individuals, but also how we can do that in community to make what we're doing sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, even as you touch on that piece, just to kind of piggyback on something you said, I definitely think all the time, that, when I have it all together, that's probably when God's going to call me home.
Right.
So if I'm now at a place where I have nothing else that I can necessarily contribute while I'm here on earth, that's probably when my journey is done.
Right.
So I 100% agree that I think the journey is, we're always continuing to evolve. We're always continuing to grow. That's a part of this process. And the thing about it is, this process involves other people. We're not meant to do life in isolation. And we do need other people sometimes to be our mirror, to reflect back to us, what is actually present. I know that sometimes it's very easy to feel like you have it all together when you do life by yourself. You do all the work. And if we kind of bring this into play with, or in line with like therapy or coaching, you're
Yes.
doing all the work as an individual. And you're like, hey, I've done taken all the steps, and so now I'm good, and so now I'm ready to venture back into relationship and do relationship. And then you get into relationship and you're like, wait, hold on, everything that I all the work I put in, maybe there's something wrong with this other individual that's causing all these things to stir up.
Right.
Not recognizing that sometimes that's just a part of relationships, like you said, Christine, having the difficult conversations, really being able to bounce things back and forth between each other is how we grow. So the idea of us growing and shifting and being, when we go back into our world, we're naturally impacting the environment because of where we are internally. And that has an effect on the system, relational system as a whole as well. So this piece is like, if you're doing the work in relationships also, it has this reciprocating effect that it's healing for us as individuals too. So either way, it's this circular thing that you're doing the work internally, individually. It has an impact on the system, the relationship, and all the relationships that you have, and then vice versa. If you're doing work in relationships in community alongside other people, that also has an effect on sometimes healing and supporting us as individuals. It's all connected.
Yes. And conversations I was having last year is about, and I forget the order that it's in, but storming, forming, and norming, right? The parts of developing a group, of working together. So sometimes people feel like when there's a need for a difficult conversation or when there's frustrations and things come up, oh, that shows that we're doing something wrong. Well, no, that just shows that, like you said, you're taking this individual and then this individual and bringing them together. And we're not identical twins, and even identical twins are different, you know? And
Hmm.
so it's just part of learning how to work better together. And so I count it as a win, of learning how to have those conversations together, because I have them differently with each of my business partners, and I have those conversations different with my romantic partner, even with myself, you hold those conversations differently. But when you don't do that, that's what I think about is what happens if you don't process stuff? What happens if we don't unpack it and we don't get better next time? Well, then that's a huge liability. So having the frustration and the difficult conversation is not necessarily the liability. It's the opportunity cost of if we don't continue to get better and grow together.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Chanel, we love to give our listeners resources or tips or things. And I'm just sitting here thinking, if I was listening to this podcast today, knowing that you're a mental health and relationship coach,
Hmm.
do you have, and I know every situation is different, right? But when you think about relationships, do you have some top things or things that you recommend for partners or people in relationships? Do you have some, I think one of the things, like Shannon and I, as business partners, one of the things we do with each other is if we're starting to get stressed, we immediately take a deep breath. We're like, okay, pause, let's take a deep breath. Woo, especially when we're working on things like accounting and taxes and stuff like that. But
Right.
I think about, as a relationship coach, like, what is
Mhm.
some of the advice you would give to somebody that was listening today?
That's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I feel like this is one of the areas where I approach it pretty similarly across the board. The difference that I would say is the details of every relationship are different, but some of the strategies or the interventions are pretty similar, in the sense that most of the conversations and dialogue that we have, especially in our romantic relationships and people who are the closest to us, um, the conversation is more than just the words that we're using. And I think a lot of times we put all this focus on, specifically language, and we're missing that there's a whole conversation that is happening underneath the water. There's a whole conversation that's happening on a systems level. So when I support couples, or if I'm talking to people about relationships, I'm trying to get them to cue in to what's happening on a systems level when you're interacting with your partner. So this idea that even as you said, hey, we take a deep breath, like when, yes, absolutely, because breathing really does something to our system to help kind of decompress us. So recognizing that what's showing up emotionally or whatever you're feeling in that moment, it shows up in your body and you can use your body also to support you. That's kind of where I start people, especially because my first profession is a licensed massage therapist and have been doing that for like, yeah, over like what is that? Maybe I started probably like 20 years ago, but got into it like over 15 now professionally. And the body and everything else are connected. So my advice would be someone who doesn't necessarily have the insight of what's happening on a systems level. Pay attention to what's happening in your body when you're having maybe a difficult conversation with your partner. And let's cue in and see if we can pick up on any sensory information that now gives us some insights to something that may be happening underneath the surface. And whether it's bringing in different strategies to kind of soothe and cope in that moment to connect, that's one way that we can help to regulate ourselves, but also too paying attention to your partner and paying attention to the visible cues that we're seeing. Maybe their face has shifted a little bit and you're thinking that they're talking because of the words they're using out of anger, and you pick up sadness on their face. That can give you another insight to some of the conversation that's happening underneath the surface. So I don't know. I hope that brings maybe some direction or some clarity into what I was saying. But yeah, definitely, dialogue happens on a systems level even before the verbal comes in.
So, can you go more into that? I hear you
Mhm,
saying it's not just what you're verbally saying, right? It can be
mhm.
body language. Can you go more in detail about what you mean when you say systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's think about it when we were pre-verbal, okay? Like as infants. Infants have whole conversations with their caregivers or their parents, and they have no language. But there's a way that they relate to another human system. So when we're talking about system, we're talking about just like central nervous system, the stuff that's happening internally.
Right.
That child can sense as an infant whether or not this is a safe space, if there's danger, if maybe there's something that's off, and they pick up on that, and that shapes the way that they engage to try to get their needs met or with the rest of their environment. So
Mhm.
this idea that adults are just grown children, we are
Mhm.
just grown children who've learned certain skills to be able to apply in life now. But when we are triggered or sometimes when we're our most vulnerable, we go back to that state
Right.
of, that kind of like childlike place and learn how to get our needs met from that place. So that's kind of what I'm saying when I say systems is what's happening internally that's maybe influencing the way that you're receiving this other individual or the communication, because that can be a barrier sometimes to us really being able to connect.
That makes sense. So, if we can shift from relationships, right, to healing, dreaming, and launching,
Mhm.
somebody who is interested in that next project and they might be kind of nervous about it, what action step would you give them?
Yeah, absolutely. My approach that I take supporting people with getting to the place of recognizing their dream is really being able to kind of come to the table, discern your natural abilities and kind of how you were created and designed, the things that interest you. What are your natural gifts, talents, the things that sometimes we overlook, which it may be the way you look, the way you talk, the culture that you're a part of, who is drawn to you naturally just for those specific reasons. And recognizing that that's also a part, it's an asset for you, and to some degree may be that thing that your gifts will make room for you. So being able to explore with that individual, the first step to me is getting clear with identity. You can't really take a step into vision and real like purpose and passion apart from identity. You can make a lot of things happen in your life, but I don't believe in just, I'm not the person that people go to if you're just trying to make, to launch into any endeavor that's not necessarily something that's based off of like purpose and passion, something that's innate. Because I find that that's the way that you can support that the best is if this is something that's in you that you would do it even if you if nobody ever paid you for it, that this is something that you would still be drawn to doing. And then you find, like I said, just that idea that like really your gifts make room for you, and you can find yourself being able to make a living for yourself, or create different opportunities based off of what you already have at your disposal. So I hope that answered, to some degree. Is first thing is I'm working with people on getting clear about identity.
Yes.
And I love that. Because, often, I mean, I think we take it for granted sometimes, especially those of us in this field who
Mhm.
are living into our purpose and we feel like we're on purpose. But there's a lot of people that struggle with that are like, what am I here to do? And can't see their gifts. So I love that you help them, that you reflect their gifts to them and help them sort that out. And I also know, working with some of my clients, and I'm sure you may have had this too, they also may lose it along the way because of crisis or age and stage or, different times in your life. So I just want to say to anybody listening, like if you are older and you feel like, well, I should have already gotten this figured out, let go of those shoulds and don't should yourself and reach out if you're feeling lost,
Mhm.
because there's people that can guide you on this, and I love that you do that, Shenell, with your clients.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about how you help other people. What do you do for yourself that helps keep you centered in the work that you help others with?
hmm You know, definitely, I would say first and foremost, it's my faith. That has been the one consistent anchor throughout my entire life. Before I was married, before I had children, before I
Yeah.
was wearing all the different hats, you
Right.
know, I was a child of God, and my relationship with God has been my anchor. That everything else has kind of been funneled through that. It helped me find my own identity. And just to kind of, piggyback on something you said, Christine, this idea that, stage of life, I don't believe that purpose is necessarily just like one thing. I think it can be like even fluid and change across the lifespan, that there's a different way that you can show up and maybe fuel purpose or some passion in life at any given point in your life. But yes, really, I mean, I've been holding hands with the Lord and kind of walking through life, and being directed in this way or this way, and uncovering new things about myself, and taking certain steps towards one profession or another, and finding new passions and insights. And so my faith in the place of even just like worshiping together as a community, that's a big thing, because this is we're talking about the idea of community and being connected. My family is so central to me. We're very much rooted and grounded in like just togetherness and supporting each other, and I'm very blessed and fortunate to have that. And so, speaking of like my immediate family, but also like my parents, I'm blessed that both of my parents are still around. I have sisters who I'm very very close with. My oldest sister, extremely close with her, and she has been like a mentor throughout a large part of my life. And so, friendships, fostering that, fostering family relationships and family ties, spending time, in my personal world. And I think, Christian, I heard you when I was back behind stage, this idea of like sometimes the recharge is being able to be with your, tribe of people, your community,
Right.
that it
Right.
does something for you. So for me, I'm a simple person. I don't like to overcomplicate things. So the community I have, that inspires and uplifts me, and then my faith, honestly.
Right. But that's so real. When you talk
Mhm.
about social wellness, I think today in the Instagram world,
Mm.
Like, often people think, oh, you've got to have this, or you have to be out at this party, or you have to be out at this concert, or and some of that is fun. I don't want to discount that because I've been to some really good concerts and to some really good parties. So I don't want
Yes,
to discount it,
it's
right?
true. Yes.
But when I really get down to my social wellness, it is my connections in deep and authentic relationships
Mm.
with people I love. And it could be playing pickleball with them on a Sunday afternoon, as silly as that is, right? Or having a cup of tea with somebody.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be, when you said you're simple, Chanel, I like, me too. Like, it is literally the simple things that probably bring my heart more joy. Um, and I'm so lucky in my life that I've gotten to do some really incredible things. But when I really think about true wellness, it's, you know, hanging out with my people and being content.
Yeah. And when I think about why people get upset and why all this stuff happens, that's really what they're trying to get to as well, right? They're upset about the money. You're spending all these hours at work for the money so that your house is there when you get back, so that your child can go to the school that you picked for them and you chose for them intentionally, or whatever the reasons are. I don't know if I've seen a situation where it doesn't boil down to that at the end of the day. So, yeah, I love it. So, every week we do a wisdom in action, right? Because we know that it's not enough to just know all these amazing things. Therapy is needed, all these things, but you have to act on it, right? Actually go to therapy, actually have the difficult conversations. What are you doing this week, Shenell, for yourself, for your social wellness?
Mm. I think that's a good question. I think this week I've been pressing in a lot deeper into just kind of like my spiritual recharge,
Hmm.
feeling a little off, and you recognize that especially when you're in a service oriented field, you have to pour from what you have. And if I'm depleted, then I don't have, anything really to give. So
Right.
for myself, I have to get connected to a higher source or a source higher than myself so that I can be recharged and be able to, actually produce something greater. So for me, I'm doing like a reset and really trying to get more grounded and rooted with some faith practices throughout this week.
I love it. I'm right there with you. I hear what you're saying.
Mhm, mhm.
If I had to say a wisdom in action, I mean, I love it. And Christine, it's hard for me to just pick one. So I have like
Go
five
for two.
hashtags over here. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, go for more. If you need more this
All
week, go
right.
for it.
So I'll tell you the three that I have at the bottom of this page. Okay. At the bottom of my notes are continue to evolve, right? Fuel purpose. I love that. I really feel like that's what I help. I'm an encourager too. We talked about it, right? Like fueling people's purpose. I love that. Um, and hold hands with the Lord. I feel like in times when I feel like I lost myself, like that is the anchor. So just remembering that, um, you're always growing. You can help other people grow, and to do it from a certain place. That's where I am right now when I think about social wellness.
I
What
love
about you,
that.
Christine? Thank you.
Mm. Well, I'm thinking about one of my people. I'm a week and a day away from one of my people studying abroad. And
Mhm.
so she won't be in my house for 6 months. And so what was coming up for me, and I don't know how to hashtag it, but I was thinking about how much I love just spending time with my people. So
Yeah,
I need to create more space this week because I literally have 7 days. And so I need to, my work schedule's been a little nuts,
great.
and I'm a little out of balance with work and relaxation time.
I hear you.
So my hashtag is create more space
I
so
love
I
it.
can play some games and drink some tea and go for some walks and just be intentional about that time
Yeah.
for the next week.
And if I could give you one of my affirmations, and usually it's
Yeah,
for the day, right, is I have the time that I need to do everything I
right.
need to do. So
Right.
you have the time that you
Oh,
need.
I expand time. That's my other hashtag, expand time.
Write it down.
Like, let's
Uh,
I love that.
And that's what I love about being intentional about it. Because when you're
Mhm.
intentional and you create the space and you're saying, "What do I want?" and you really look at it, things are exponentiated. They exceed expectations. So, thank you so much for your time, Chanel. It's been a pleasure talking with
Absolutely.
you.
Yes, you guys as well. Thank you so much
So
for
fun.
having me. I really enjoyed
Oh,
the conversation.
Yes.
we are
And
so delighted. And hey, Chanel, I'm planning to get to Houston sometime this year. So I would love to meet in person.
mhm.
Yes, Shannon, thank
Absolutely.
you for posting
Yay!
thewholewomancoaching.com.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And we will put that link in our show notes so people can connect with you. And
Awesome.
yeah, just so delighted. And thank you for your work in the world.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you both as well for this platform and for all that you're doing. And I hope to connect with both of you guys in person sometime soon.
Yes, that would be
Right?
amazing.
Come visit us in ATL. We're not
Yeah.
Yeah.
much warmer than Houston right now, but you
I'll
know.
wait.
Right.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
See you soon.
So fun. Oh my
Mm.
goodness. So fun.
I love talking about therapy and stuff,
Right?
especially with a psychology background. I tell
Mhm.
people that it's like you breaking your leg and you just went home. Like go see somebody. Things happen. It's okay to talk about it, like let's reset it. Let's make sure we're healthy.
I was thinking about during that conversation. I mean, I love tools and resources and different
Yeah.
modalities. And I was thinking about that beautiful conversation we just had with Chanel, and then the conversation we had with our coffee and chat person,
Yes.
and really thinking about how many resources and tools are literally almost they're at our fingertips nowadays.
Yes.
And if you're overwhelmed or seeking,
Hmm.
there are people to help you. Like there are
Yes.
people to help sort through, like Chanel, to figure out, okay, this is your purpose, or
Right.
this is what you're attracting. And
Right.
because I know it can be overwhelming.
It
I
can
mean, I
be.
think about just scrolling through Instagram can be overwhelmed. Do this, do that.
Yeah, are you a no, I'm not. Yes, I am though, but I'm gonna keep scrolling, yeah.
I'm gonna go to take it. I mean, shoot, just the recipes nowadays.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yes.
Lord, I want to cook them all. I don't want to cook any of them. I don't
Right.
know.
Yes. I understand.
Information overload, right?
Mhm.
But I just think about really this time we're living in
Mhm.
and how lucky we are that we can be connected and that we can have these resources. And speaking of connection,
Yes.
you and I, before we jumped on, and
Mhm.
probably will be live by the time this
Tonight.
airs
Yes.
tonight,
Hopefully. We'll see.
is our new LinkedIn group,
Mhm.
Women Connected in Wisdom. We want to invite you to be in community with us.
Yes.
If you are a listener, if you have been a guest, if just found us,
Right.
head over to LinkedIn and type in Women Connected in Wisdom group and join us over there, because we're going to continue some of the conversations from the podcast. We're going to have days or posts. We're figuring all that out where we
Yeah.
uplift people in our community and the work they're doing in the world. And is there anything else you want to say about it, Shannon?
Yeah, like if you're like, okay, well, and I am this person sometimes, right? Oh, it's not for me. I wouldn't write yourself off so quick, right? If you're a
Mm-hmm.
seeker, like she said, if you're looking for a resource, you're looking for something in one of the dimensions that you feel like you can get better in, it's for you, right? We have tailored resources. This is episode 144. So we have a list of experts in each area for you, right? If you're a sharer, if you have amazing resources and stories like Chanel, and you want to help people who are looking for their purpose, looking for whatever tool that you have that you specifically made out of your story and you saw the need for it, come talk to us. Come see if we can help uplift your resource and help you share it. And like you said, I know I always want to continue the conversation of the podcast. So if you want to talk about
Right.
Chanel's episode, this is what we're going to do on the page and meet us there.
Right. I also think about, I mean, this is episode 144, and we have some episodes that you and I literally still reference
Hmm.
from a year ago, two
Hmm.
years ago. And
Right.
we'll say, oh, so and so, like,
Yeah.
we're hoping they join us at
Yeah.
this. And then you can have direct conversations with them.
Hmm.
So I'm delighted and excited. Is there anything else our listeners need to know about?
I don't think so. If this is your first time listening though and you don't know about our conference, we do have the second annual summit coming up. It's going to be at the end of February. So join us. We'll have the authors from volume 2. We have 12 authors speaking
Mm.
about intentional dimensional wellness. It's going to be a really good time over 2 days and we look forward to seeing you there.
Right? And
Yeah,
we do still have couple of spots open for sponsors.
we do.
If you are interested in partnering with us and
Yes.
having an opportunity to speak at the conference, also reach out. You can
Yes.
reach out at Women Connected in Wisdom Podcast at gmail.com. And we'll put it in the show notes. And just, so grateful to be connected.
Yes, yes, me too. Okay, guys, we'll see you here live at 5 next week. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll see you soon.